Well, great afternoon to everyone on December 11th. It is 2 o'clock, well, actually 2:01 Central Time, and we are extremely excited for today's webinar to kind of introduce, show a little bit of text-to-speech, talk about it coming out, and show some things. I'm joined by a couple of folks here. So my name's Jason Martinez. I know most of you guys. I'm joined by Jenny, one of our trainers and implementation folks. I'm joined by Ed, our data analysis and student monitoring product manager, and one of our newest employees. Some of you know her, especially from the Region 17 area, longtime Eduphoria user and supporter, and now Eduphoria product manager for curriculum instruction and assessment, Emily Nolan. So we are glad to have Emily on with us. And of course, we also have some of our other staff members in attendance listening in and helping out in the background. Before I get started with, or before we get started when talking about content and everything, this is already well past the number of people that we typically have in a webinar. We have had, last time I looked, in the mid 1200s of people that had registered for this. And as of right now, we have right at 400 people in attendance, and that's growing by the second. And so we're going to reach the limit of how many people can attend live. But most importantly, we've already well gone past the amount of time that we could spend on answering questions from a group this big. So because many people are going to have to watch the recording, and we want you guys to share the recording out to all of the folks around you in your districts and schools around that need to see it, we are not going to answer questions during this webinar. So let me reiterate that again. Unlike every other webinar that we do, typically we answer questions and you can put them in the questions box and we will get to them via text, or sometimes actually address them vocally during the webinar. Today, because of just mass number of people, and also we want to be efficient in getting things shown so that the recording will be clean, so that you can share it, we will not be answering questions. So I apologize for that. And also, Jenny's going to be spending some time talking about online testing. And obviously, we expect by what we show, many of you are going to be much more interested in possibly trying and doing online testing within your districts. And yes, we're going to introduce that a little bit, and some of you are already experienced with that. But expect, because of the demand, we will do a webinar specifically about online testing sometime early in the year, after the Christmas holidays. So wanted to go ahead and address that before we got started. All right, Jenny, next slide, please. So text-to-speech is here, and the reason why we have basically in little small letters there, this is a huge deal. A huge deal, and big for us. We're very excited. You saw our little icons. I know you guys are all excited, obviously, with the big number of attendance. Y'all are excited as we are. However, we are doing a phased kind of rollout, and I think it says this on a slide coming up. And so over the next week and a half-ish, we are going to be releasing this kind of in a progressive manner to others. And so you will have it, your district will have text-to-speech sometime before the end of the school year. I mean, not school year, the end of the calendar year. And so some of you might already have it, and some of you will be getting it in the next few days, but we're doing it kind of as a waterfall type release to ensure just performance. It's such a big deal, and it's going to have an impact on so many big things. We want it to go out well, and matter of fact, we are actually going to do all of our future releases for the most part that way, going forward. And so we're going to release it in kind of stages. And so be excited to see it. You will have it. It is not something that we are still building. It is here. And so you will be seeing it sometime within the next 2 weeks, and will be out for sure and available to use for all districts by the time you are back from your winter break holidays.
All right, so today we're going to run through several things kind of quickly because we want to make sure that we can address all the parts of not just text-to-speech and the online testing supports, but kind of the general frame of how these things work within our already existing online testing software. So the agenda here in front of you, We're going to try and get through some frequently asked questions that we've already been hearing from folks since we've been displaying this stuff at conferences, and also kind of go over the implementation that Jason just talked about, plus a demo. And so let's go ahead and jump right into it. The number one question, Jason already answered. When are you going to have it? The answer is sooner than soon. It's later than now, but sooner than soon. That's the answer. You're going to have it by the new year. Okay. And so start checking for this next week to see if it's available. Some of the parts of this, like the management of student support status that we're going to show you, is actually available right now. You can use it right now. We've already had some people asking us about it, but the text to speech part of it, start checking next week. Let's go ahead and get the next slide. We are not taking requests for can we have it now versus later, because we have a very carefully scaffolded plan for how we're going to roll this thing out. The idea is we get it to you before the new year so that you have it and you can look at it, and then once the new year starts, we know that's when people are going to start implementing this thing. That's when that comes out. So here's some more questions. We do have other supports, not just text to speech, that are going to work for online testing. All right. So spelling assistance is actually releasing with text to speech. Spelling assistance is not the big deal that text to speech is. So we kind of rolled that in with text to speech, but it's actually going to be available just like with, it says now available, meaning now with text to speech. As soon as you have text to speech available, you'll also have spelling assistance. Spanish interface, early 2020. And then the content clarifiers, that's the thing where you can roll over certain, or the student can roll over certain text and get the clarification text. That's not yet ready. And so we're not prepared to put any sort of timeline on content clarifiers. Text to speech is the big one that people are going to be using for the rest of the school year. We also have lots of people interested in how text to speech reads other languages. So our text to speech software comes from Amazon. It's Amazon Polly, and Amazon Polly is very, very smart. I like to joke it's because Alexa's in your house listening to you talk, and so Alexa knows how we speak. So the deal there is the text-to-speech voice will read other languages. It's actually fairly intelligent at detecting that a sentence is written in a language other than English. That being said, we do have some options available to us from Amazon Polly to make it possibly better. And so for right now, it's one voice, and that one voice defaults and reads based off of the sentence, but I've even heard it reading some French that was sounding fairly French-like to me. I don't speak French, so it was convincing enough for me. Another big question we get is, does this follow the rules for the state of Texas? Okay, and the answer is no, this comes from Amazon Polly. However, it can be close. A lot of the rules for the state of Texas are real specific, especially when it comes to something like how a math symbol might be read or so forth. So this is going to work more like if you have some sort of extension in your browser that reads the text. It doesn't actually have oral administration rules embedded into that, but we can get it pretty close. All right. And then in case you missed it when we said it earlier, when are you getting text to speech? Soon, by the end of next week. So you'll probably hear us say that a couple of times throughout this. Jenny.
I almost forgot to unmute myself, but I remembered. So implementing online text to speech, I think you really have to think about this, how you're going to implement this in your district. And you really need to ask yourself 3 questions before you jump right in. One is, have you been using online testing? 2 is, have you had success using online testing? And 3 is, are your teachers comfortable with the new online test proctoring experience? I think our worst case scenario would be it releases, you come back in January, you're going to give your benchmarks, and you're like, cool, we're going to put kids online with text to speech in January for benchmarks, but we've never online tested before. We're going to jump right in and do it, and we don't implement this properly. And then the testing environment is hectic. So worst case scenario, you are doubting the validity of the data that came from those assessments because you started the test 30 minutes late because you couldn't get things rolling, or again, there were people in and out of the room because we had questions and that kind of thing. And then also you have teachers who then say, we're not using this anymore, it doesn't work. And so again, I think you really have to implement online testing carefully. There needs to be, training of teachers, and then of course training of students on how to use it. And it needs to be rolled out like any other software system is rolled out, with some training implied, not, or training enforced, not just, hey, let's give it a shot. And think about who you're going to implement with. I would definitely recommend you pick a few tech savvy teachers. There's nothing difficult about online testing or text to speech, but if you throw a teacher in who's uncomfortable with technology right in the beginning to give something like a benchmark, you could definitely run into trouble there. So I think it's just really important that you implement this as carefully as you would anything else. Anybody want to add? Ed, you want to add anything to that?
No, I totally agree. You may be implementing online testing as a part of your administration system, not just text to speech. And so you definitely want to have deliberation.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, managing support statuses. So this is done either at the campus or district level. You'll do it under the Students tab. When you click on the Students tab, now you'll see Upload Student Support Status. It's where you upload a CSV file. The CSV file, there's actually in our help section a sample file available with the correct column headers. So you're going to put in a student ID, and then you'll put in a yes or no indicating whether they have those supports for each content area.
It's
So,
actually a, hold on, sorry to interrupt. It's actually a 1 or a 0. So
okay.
on the, yeah, and on Jenny's screen on the left side there where it says click here, it's kind of, I know it's small, but we try to get it in there to go to our online, that'll link straight to our online help section for this. And it has, like Jenny said, it has this example CSV template that can be downloaded right there into Excel. And in that, it has a little note in there that says, we expect 1 for a yes and 0 for a no.
Okay,
And so
perfect.
the instructions there should tell you.
Okay, perfect. So again, a 1 or a 0, you'll enter for each content area for each support. They are, again, great, content area specific. So just because they have text to speech for, reading doesn't mean they have it for math, that kind of thing. And so then you'll upload that file, and that will be the default support status for that student. So that will be, again, turn it on for that student. That said, teachers can always override that at the test level and say, I want to try text to speech with this student, or I want to turn it off for this test for this student, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Can I
So,
real fast add something?
yeah.
So we are exploring some other options for that file, because we know that there is also there are files that exist related to how you manage this for state testing, and so we're looking into other options. This is our file format for our 4 supports, and so this is how that gets managed now. Also, if you're managing it for your campus, you can only manage for students that you teach. So if you load a file in, you can only load file in with students that, I'm sorry, not teach, that are on the campus where you are. So if you're a campus level administrator and you load a file in, only students on your campus will get managed. So that way people can't accidentally overwrite support status for other campuses. District level people, however, can manage a file for the entire district.
Well, and
Well,
so
no,
that brings up a good point, because a lot of times what happens with roles and rights is throughout the years, somebody, a junior high principal gets district-wide access for whatever reason. Maybe it said that they can see kids coming to them or see kids after they've left them, that kind of thing. So that might be something you want to check and make sure that is, their role and right. Their roles are correct before they start to manage this, because if they upload a file with students off their campus and they have district-wide access, it could override that. What were you gonna say, Jason?
yeah. So 2 things. One, I know you guys are having questions. Like I said, we really just don't have time to answer them. So we may attempt, but if your question doesn't get answered, I'm sorry. And 2, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but like all of our webinars, and I know we have definitely people in here that have never attended one of our webinars before. All of our webinars are recorded, and so absolutely this recording will be posted in our online help. If you're registered, you'll get a link to the recording, and I'm sure we'll probably send something out from our marketing team as well with a link to the recording. So it is absolutely going to be recorded.
Well, there's a second way to manage student support statuses for campus and district administrators. One is through that file, and the second is by individual student on the individual students tab. So if I have an ART or a 504 meeting for a particular student and I don't want to fool with uploading a file, I can actually just go to the student profile and select those. These will be visible to teachers, but not editable to teachers. So again, teachers will see the support status of a student here, but they can't unclick or click, and permanently change the status, the default status of a student. Administrators, however, at the campus or district level can edit this. So this is probably the simplest way if you're talking about a handful of 504 or ARD meetings that you've just had, that you could go in and edit these by student rather than doing an additional file upload. So that is the second way that they can be applied to a student or made the default support status for a student. All right. Did I skip a slide? Yep. Proctoring a test with text-to-speech. I skipped that one. How do I proctor student supports for a test? So this is at the teacher level. When they are in the online test proctoring screen, they get to this screen by clicking the test available tab on their Analyze tab. When they open Aware Up, it defaults to the Analyze tab. They have a test available button. They click on that. It's going to list all of their tests available. Once they turn online test proctoring on for a test, it will show up under this window. And again, like Jason said, we will do a webinar specifically on how to do online testing early next year. This one's really focused on, again, text-to-speech and spelling assistance. So once they have that test open for online test proctoring, they can then click on a student's name on this little supports window. There's a pencil here. You can click on it. It will open it up and they can actually manage it at the assessment level. This does not change the default support status for a student. In other words, the next time they open a test, it will be back to whatever the default support status is. This only changes the support status for that instance. So for this test only. So if I want to try, Colby, let's say, has no supports, but I want to try giving him text-to-speech or spelling assistance on a test, I can certainly turn it on for Colby for this one test, and then gather data on how he performs with or without it, maybe as evidence that he maybe needs supports. I could also turn it off for Colby. Let's say Colby has always had text-to-speech, and I'm not really sure that he's benefiting from it anymore. I can turn it off, and then we can compare performance with text-to-speech and without text-to-speech, and that can take that, to my 504 R meeting and say, look, he performs, at the same level or better without text-to-speech. I think we can pull this back. And so again, it can be managed at the individual assessment level by the teacher. All right, and so this is just another note. We want to just make it really clear that when a teacher manages it at the assessment level, it is not changing the default support. So the Save Student supports are for defaults. So those that you upload in that file or that a campus or district level administrator changes on the individual student profile page, those are the default supports. If a teacher turns on or off one of the embedded supports for a student for an individual test, it does not change the default. And so again, tests proctored by teachers allow teachers to be the final word on the access to a support for that individual test, not for all future tests.
If I can,
yes,
real
go ahead.
fast, this screen right here for everybody, this screen right here is an important distinction. And so that's why we kind of have it in this bright color and everything else. This is an important distinction here. We save what supports were turned on for each student for each test entry. Okay, and the next slide we'll kind of show how that relates to data analysis. But this right here shows the distinction between how we save the support for the test entry versus what just happens to be saved as the status for that student. Okay, so sorry.
Yep, no, that's good. All right, go ahead. Emily, I think you're going to talk about this.
Okay, great. Here is the piece that makes the data nerd in me very, very happy. So if you're used to seeing this screen, this is the aware data analysis piece where you can custom make your own data. And so there will be a field where you can pull the spelling assistance or text to speech, and you can align it in a data report to see if a student, yes, if they're receiving this on the test or no. And of course, if you're lining it up side by side, this will reference what Jenny was talking about to see if the text to speech is making an impact on their scores. So is it something that we want to keep going, or is it something that is almost irrelevant based on what we're seeing as far as the data analysis portion goes? Good.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. All right, go ahead, Jenny. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'd unmute.
Yeah. All right. Also, there's a lot to text to speech. How does it read certain things? We've talked about, you talk about math equations. I was a math teacher. And so all of those things we've obviously gone through and done some testing. And obviously as we're releasing it, we're getting some feedback on that too. And we expect more. But in images themselves, you can edit an image by double clicking on it or right clicking on it. And when the image properties show up, if you want something to be read from that image, like in this case, it was actually an image that had been screenshot in of a fraction. And so if you wanted to say 7/10 or 7/10 or whatever, if you'll put that in the alternative text, that will be what will be read from the text to speech reader when it gets to that image. So it's a way for us to allow you to still be putting screenshots of images and stuff in there. And if you want that image to be of something like a math fraction or equation or whatever that you've just screenshot in there, this is a way for you to control what's being read. So it also works for maps and graphs and other things as you see, but also it's just a good way for us to address things that are very difficult, as you might imagine, for a computer to be able to read. But like Ed said, it's a pretty smart reader. We've been impressed with how it's learned, and our developers have learned to adjust it since we've been playing around with it internally. But we expect to hear more back from you guys to be able to adjust things. But this is some self-control over things like images.
Yeah, and you do that from the test authoring window. So when you build your test, you can just double click on an image and this window pops up. So it's where you build the test. It's not in the online testing window.
And I played with the character limit and I never quite reached it. So your alternative text, even though that looks like a little box there, you can type whole sentences. It'll honor, because it's reading it like a regular sentence, it'll honor punctuation. So if you wanted to pause some kind of way, you can put commas and periods in there. The alternative text can be controlled, so that you can get it to sound like you want it to sound.
All right, so we're gonna we can't show live because the audio would not come through the presentation and for y'all to hear it. And so Jenny's made a quick little video for us, and so we're just gonna have this play, and so hopefully it'll work.
To utilize text-to-speech, students will log in as normal and select a test. If text-to-speech has been enabled for the student, the speak icon will appear to the right of the questions and answer choices. To hear a question, the student will select the speak icon.
On Monday, 149 people each bought one CD at a music store. On Tuesday, 263 people each bought one CD. All the CDs cost $9. What was the total amount paid for the CDs on these 2 days?
To hear an answer choice, the student will select the speak icon next to the answer choices.
$1,341.
To hear a selection of a question, the student will select the words and hit speak selection.
People each bought.
Students can speed up or slow down the speaking rate by selecting speak options and moving the bar to the left or right. They can also adjust the volume by doing the same thing. To move to the next question, students select the next question from the bottom. Notice the speak icons are still available. If you have a question with a resource or reading passage, those are currently text-to-speech disabled for all items. The students cannot click on the text-to-speech or speak icon here and have the reading passage read. However, they can still have the
In
questions
paragraph 11, the word aspire means to
and answer
design a
choices
project.
and answer choices read.
So I just want to clarify, it's the other right. It's the other right. Did y'all hear that? I'm gonna have to make a new video.
Yes, the icon appears to the other right of the text,
Yes.
otherwise known as.
There were only about 427 people probably thinking that. Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Sorry.
so we have some online help documents in our online help already created and ready for this. There were some links to that with some of the correspondence, and you'll see them again. But you could also just go in there and search an online help. Obviously, it's under aware. It's its own section, and so that can help you. And then there's also online testing help that can help you if you're interested in learning a little bit more online testing. But like we've said a couple of times, and I'll reiterate right now, we expect that there'll be a greater demand for those of you to try to encounter some online testing with your students that may have not done it in the past. And so as in response to that, our team will do an online testing webinar specifically early sometime in January after the beginning of the year starts, and we have some time to get those invitations and stuff out for you to register. So we will definitely do that to help you guys that have not endeavored on online testing yet. We want, like Jenny said, we want that first try implementation of online testing to go successfully, and so we want to make sure we guide you in a way to do that. And I would say that if there are no longer any questions, but we already said we're not going to have questions, and so we wanted to make this short as possible so that we could make a clean recording as much as possible so that you could share it with many people around so they don't have to sit through an hour of recording to get the information they want. To reiterate again, some of you already have it. It's going to be cascading out over the next 7 to 10 days or so. It is part of Aware. It is something that we are excited to offer. It's all about helping kids, and so down the road, we expect all testing to be online, and this is somewhere we've had to get, and we are super excited as a company that we're getting there. And I want to take just the time to thank Ed, the lead of our Aware team, kind of as part of this. And obviously all the developers, computer developers on our side that contributed to this. This is a very big thing for us, and most importantly, it's because we know it's a very big thing for our districts to use to help students out. So we're excited. Hopefully you guys are too. You'll be hearing more information about this over the next coming weeks, and we'll advertise that webinar on online testing as soon as we get that scheduled. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Talk to you again.